Before CGI, before green screens, before digital safety nets and endless retakes, one film dared to summon God, defy death, and risk everything to make cinema eternal. Released in 1956, The Ten Commandments was not just a movie, it was a declaration. A statement that film could reach beyond entertainment and touch something sacred. At a time when Hollywood was still discovering its own limits, this production chose to ignore them entirely. Set in ancient Egypt, the story follows Moses, raised as a prince within Pharaoh's palace, clothed in gold, trained to rule. He has everything: power, privilege, certainty. And then, in a single shattering revelation, he learns the truth. He is not Egyptian royalty, but a Hebrew slave by birth. That moment changes everything. Moses is forced into the most painful decision a human being can face: comfort or conscience, power or purpose. He walks away from a throne and into exile, guided by nothing but faith and an unshakable calling to free his people. What follows is more than rebellion. It is a journey of belief, one marked by miracles that didn't just reshape biblical history, but reshaped cinema itself. The Nile turns to blood. Darkness consumes Egypt. Fire rains from the sky. The Red Sea parts, not with pixels, but with raw ingenuity and human daring. This was not simply a religious epic. It was a story of freedom, conviction, and the human spirit standing against impossible odds. With towering sets, tens of thousands of extras, and Charlton Heston's commanding performance, director Cecil B. DeMille created a cinematic monument, one that still stands taller than most films ever made. But behind that grandeur lay danger, obsession, and secrets few audiences ever knew. The director nearly died making it. In 1955, the desert set became a city of sand and fire. Scorching lights baked the ground. Thousands of extras marched under armor and robes. And high above them all stood Cecil B. DeMille, 73 years old, balanced atop a 40-meter iron ladder, shouting commands like a battlefield general. Then his heart gave out. A sudden, crushing pain hit his chest. His vision blurred. He collapsed, barely stopping himself from falling to his death. Doctors rushed in and delivered a brutal warning: "Continue, and you will die." 2 days later, DeMille returned to the set. "I'd rather die making this film," he said. And he meant every word. That obsession, terrifying and awe-inspiring, pulses through every frame of the movie. The Death Angel scene hid a chilling secret. When the final plague descends, a green mist creeps through Egyptian homes. Audiences have felt uneasy watching it for decades, even when they couldn't explain why. What most never realized is that hidden within the fog was the faint outline of a real human skull. You don't consciously see it, but your brain does. The fear comes not from what is shown, but from what your mind senses without permission. Long before psychological horror became a genre, DeMille understood something primal: terror lives in the unseen. Danger followed the production everywhere. For the scene where Moses' staff turns into a snake, DeMille refused illusion. He demanded reality. The crew brought in a live king cobra, one of the deadliest snakes on Earth. At first, it worked perfectly. Then the snake escaped. The cobra slithered toward the camera. Screams broke out. Extras fled in panic. Equipment crashed to the ground. Chaos swallowed the set. It took nearly an hour to recapture the snake. No one ever attempted that again. Even the miracles had humble origins. The devastating hailstorm that rains down on Egypt wasn't ice or stone, it was popcorn. Painted white, lightweight, harmless, and endlessly reusable. Under dramatic lighting, it transformed into divine wrath. Proof that imagination, not money, is what truly creates spectacle. And the Red Sea, the moment that defined cinematic miracles, was not CGI. It was not animation. It was gelatin. 2 massive water tanks were thickened, released like a flood, and filmed collapsing inward. Then the footage was played in reverse. 6 months of preparation for a scene lasting only minutes, yet one that etched itself into history forever. Every second demanded sacrifice. Even casting carried ruthless standards. Audrey Hepburn was considered for the role of Princess Nefertiti. Her talent was undeniable. Her beauty unquestioned. But DeMille dismissed her with chilling bluntness. Lovely, but not enough figure. The costumes, he believed, demanded a physical presence that filled the screen with authority. The role went to Anne Baxter instead. Harsh, unforgiving, human. And yet, the result endures. The Ten Commandments survives not because it was perfect, but because it was fearless. It reminds us that greatness is born when people risk everything for something they believe will outlive them. Long after the sets were dismantled. Long after the lights went dark. The story remained. A story about choosing purpose over power, faith over fear, and conviction over comfort. Nearly 70 years later, this film still parts the sea of time and walks straight into eternity. Not many movies can claim that. Fewer still can say they reshaped law, music, culture, and memory itself. The Ten Commandments was never just a film. It was a force. A moment when cinema, belief, controversy, and human ambition collided, and left ripples that never stopped moving. It began, strangely enough, with stone. As a promotional campaign in the 1950s, more than 4,000 stone tablets engraved with the Ten Commandments were erected across towns and courthouses throughout America. It was marketing, bold, physical, unforgettable. No one imagined that decades later, one of those tablets would ignite a constitutional firestorm and reach the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court. The ruling that followed echoed the film's own legacy. The tablets were deemed a cultural artifact, not a religious imposition. A movie promotion had become legal history. Cinema had crossed into law, and survived. And that wasn't the last boundary it would cross. In 1983, 4 young musicians sat around a flickering VHS tape, watching the Death Angel pass over Egypt. As the screen glowed, bassist Cliff Burton muttered words that would soon shake stadiums. "It's like creeping death." The phrase stuck. It became one of Metallica's most iconic songs, a bridge between ancient scripture and modern rebellion. Heavy metal born from a biblical plague. But not everyone saw the film as sacred. And Baxter's portrayal of Nefertiti was sensual, powerful, and unapologetic. For conservative audiences of the era, it was shocking. Some called it blasphemy. Others couldn't look away. Churches debated it. Families argued over it. The controversy only made the film larger than life. Baxter didn't just play a character, she split America in two. Behind the scenes, the chaos was just as real. At one point, Cecil B. DeMille attempted to film the plague of frogs using hundreds of real, hopping amphibians. The result? Uncontrollable laughter. Fear turned to farce. The illusion shattered. DeMille, a perfectionist to his core, made a hard call. The entire scene was cut forever. Sometimes even epic visions must bow to reality. And yet, other moments achieved an authenticity no one planned. Moses' robe, red, black, and white, was chosen for visual impact. Only decades later did scholars realize those exact colors matched the ceremonial garments of Levite priests. No research. No intention. Just coincidence, or something else, depending on what you believe. Yul Brynner certainly believed in preparation. Standing opposite Charlton Heston, tall and commanding, Brynner feared appearing small. So he trained relentlessly. Physically. Mentally. By the time the cameras rolled, Pharaoh did not bow. He stood equal. Power met power. Pride met destiny. The sets themselves refused to die. Years later, ancient goblets and Egyptian vessels from the Ten Commandments quietly resurfaced, not in a museum, but in Star Trek, The Next Generation. Props once used to depict Exodus now traveled the stars. From Moses to warp speed. Even God's miracles had unexpected origins. Uncredited Disney animators, yes, Disney, were brought in to animate the burning bush, the pillar of fire, and the divine hand carving commandments into stone. Magic created by artists whose names never appeared on screen. Laughter, too, found its way onto the set. One day, an actress accidentally called DeMille a filthy bald old man on a live microphone. The set froze. Careers seemed to hang in the air. Then DeMille calmly shouted one word, "Lunch." The tension broke. The crew erupted in laughter. A crisis dissolved into relief. Some moments were deeply personal. The baby floating down the Nile, baby Moses, was Charlton Heston's real 3-month-old son. Cinema and bloodline merged. History held in a father's hands. Other moments nearly broke the cast. The Golden Calf Festival scene took 3 weeks to film under brutal desert heat. Exhaustion turned to bitterness. Faith gave way to frustration. By the end, the mood mirrored the story itself. People tested, strained, and fragile. And then there are the things no one can explain. Crew members spoke in hushed tones about a silent white-robed figure seen watching from the desert. No footprints. No sound. Just presence, and then absence. Even God's voice carried a strange truth. Charlton Heston voiced God himself. Technicians altered the sound, but the source remained the same. Moses speaking to the divine, through his own voice. And hidden in the crowd, barely noticed, was a young drummer named Herb Alpert. An uncredited extra. A future music legend waiting his turn. This is why the film endures. Not because it was perfect, but because it was human. Filled with ambition, mistakes, belief, fear, laughter, exhaustion, coincidence, and mystery. Nearly 70 years later, it still parts the sea of time, and walks straight into eternity.